Good day and welcome back to another video. For those of you who do not know me, and if this is your first time watching one of my videos, my name is Akoran. I make a lot of different gaming videos, but a lot of it is Path of Exile. And I am a Path of Exile veteran. I've been playing since 2015. My first league was Warband's League, and I have played most of the good leagues ever since then. I've got a little over 4,000 hours in the game, and I have completed everything there is to do in the game. I have completed the Atlas many times, I have killed every single boss, I have done every piece of content there is to do in the game, and as such, I feel like I have a good understanding of what the average player enjoys and pretty much everything there is, well, most things there are to know about the game. So in this video, it's not going to be about which is better, Diablo 4 or Path of Exile. It's going to be from a Path of Exile player's viewpoint. Is it worth playing? Is it worth buying? And would you enjoy it? So in this video, I'm going to go over the leveling and campaign, and then the end game. I'm going to list some pros and cons, and then at the end, I'll go over the biggest differences between Diablo 4 and Path of Exile, and finally give my concluding thoughts on whether I think you, as a Path of Exile player, would enjoy the game and whether it's worth buying. So to begin with the campaign, it is far too long. The leveling takes way too long. All right, XP gain is exceptionally slow compared to Path of Exile. So if you're a Path of Exile player, you know, almost every Path of Exile player agrees that, you know, the campaign, especially if you're making multiple characters in a league, it's annoying to have to spend time leveling them all up. Even if you're a really good player and you get lots of leveling gear and you can finish the campaign in 3 to 4 hours, it's still 3 to 4 hours that you'd rather be spending in endgame. And, you know, say you're not super fast. Say, you know, it takes you anywhere between, let's say, 6 to 10 hours to get to the campaign. To get to the end game. You still think that's too long. Well, in Diablo 4, forget 6 to 10 hours. It's going to take you a lot longer than, more than double that time, really. A part of that problem is that it's such an open world that running around takes forever. And there are mounts, but mounts are unlocked far too late in the game. I can't remember the exact act that they're unlocked in, but I know it was either Act 4 or 5 that you unlock mounts. And so running around for the first 3-4 acts until you unlock it takes so much time. It really takes a lot of time to do it, and it does not feel rewarding. It doesn't feel like you're going through a campaign. It kind of feels like you're just, you know, this is the game. This is, you know, all the content there is to play. And I do understand why they've done it, because they've made this open world and they want you to explore it, they want you to play it. So I feel like that's probably their reasoning for making the XP gain so slow. And that's all I'm going to say on leveling. Leveling isn't really something I want to go, you know, I don't want to go in depth. This isn't a review of the game. This is just me trying to quickly, I don't know how long this video will be, say that, or say whether you'll enjoy the game as Path of Exile player. So let's go into the end game. Now, in my opinion, the end game is not at all diverse enough. I do understand that the game has just come out, but the game is developed by a big company. They've got a lot of money behind them and a lot of good developers. So I feel like, you know, as long as it's been since Diablo 3, that in all this time making this game, they could have done more. But I'm not hating on them, and I'm not going to say that, you know, the game sucks because there's not enough endgame. I do understand that the game has just come out. I know that, for example, comparison to Path of Exile, when the game first came out, obviously the endgame also wasn't very diverse. However, Path of Exile was the first game made by GGG back when it was a small dev, and, you know, that was their reason. I feel like a bigger company with more experienced devs in the team could have made more in the endgame. You know, your endgame is essentially doing Hell Tides for better gear, doing Legions for better gear and good XP, the world bosses, which only give you a, you know, a loot bonus once a week, and then nightmare dungeons, and that's pretty much it. There's, you know, in Path of Exile you have so many different things you can aim for. You know, there's Exarch, Eater of Worlds, Cyrus Guardians, Elder Guardians, Shaper Guardians. There's Maven, Uber Maven, Maven Witness fights, where you can customize the fights you're going to have, so you can either go for something that's going to be easy for your build, or challenging if you want to challenge yourself. So the end game in Diablo 4, not quite diverse enough from my viewpoint as Path of Exile player. Another issue for the end game, which for me was a big thing, is that gear upgrades slow down massively around level 60. So the end of the campaign is designed to be done around level 50. I did a few levels under, and then you can do a dungeon to unlock World Tier 3. Now, World Tier 3 is when you first get to start doing your Nightmare Dungeons, Legions, World Bosses, and Helltides. And from my experience, by the time I hit level 57, I stopped getting better gear. I would occasionally get a weapon with more damage, but I would no longer find armor with better armor rolls, better life, better stats. It just wasn't happening. So to get to World Tier 4, the dungeon is level 70, and the zones are level 73 plus. And because I just wasn't getting enough gear, wasn't getting enough XP at level 59, I think I was, I ended up doing the dungeon 11 levels under, which was, the experience was me attacking from afar because I had loads of damage. I was playing Bone Spear Necro, which is debatably the strongest build in the game at the moment, and so I could kill things easily, but I was also getting one-shot by everything. So, I think I died 3 times in the dungeon, and I managed to get it done. The boss was easy. I took him down really fast, but getting to him was a bit of a pain. Once I then unlocked World Tier 4, the way I played the game was I would do all the side quests to fill out my renown to get my Paragon points in World Tier 3, and on my second monitor I'd have up the interactive map for Diablo 4, and I would look at when the Helltides are spawning and when the Legions are spawning, and I'd mostly do the Legions because it's with other players and they gave so much XP. Each Legion would give me at least 25% XP to the next level, and so I would do those every, I'd say 20 to 30 minutes is how often they come up, and that was how I was getting my gear upgrades. I was doing it pretty much through Legion. Around level 65, I could then actually play in World Tier 4 without worrying about dying too much, and I was getting decent gear upgrades, again up until level 70-ish. I'm currently level 74, I believe, and gear upgrades have slowed down a bit. I have not found, I'm getting better armor, but I'm no longer finding better weapons. But at this point, I feel like the only thing that's mainly improving my build is filling out my Paragon tree, which then kind of leads on to, I feel like the endgame, is very repetitive. Essentially, you run higher tier Nightmare Dungeons so you can get better gear so that you can then run higher tier Nightmare Dungeons, and it's just rinse and repeat. It's just the same thing over and over, doing that so that, it feels like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing, which to me, it is somewhat enjoyable. If you like to mindlessly run through dungeons and kill stuff, awesome, you'll love it then. But for me, it gets a little bit boring after a point. Like, Path of Exile I can happily play all day if I have the time available. Diablo, play for a couple hours, I'm like, okay, I need a break now, I'm kind of getting bored. So it does get very repetitive. And that will be all I'm going to say on the end game. I'm going to next move on to the pros and cons of Diablo 4. So let's start with the pros. Let's be a bit positive. It is a fun game. At the end of the day, it is fun. If you like games where you're just going through killing monsters and getting gear and customizing your build, then awesome. You're gonna like that. The cinematics are amazing. Especially the first, the intro cinematic and the last one, really, really good. I absolutely love them. That honestly is something that I don't think that they would ever add to Path of Exile. It kind of wouldn't suit the game, but honestly, if they did, I would not hate it. I know a lot of players will probably end up skipping them, especially when you've seen them multiple times, because it's so much easier to make multiple characters in Path of Exile than it is in Diablo, that you would probably get tired of them very soon, which is, I imagine, why they've never done that, and why pretty much the only real cinematic scene in the game is after you kill Innocents in Act 5. The level scaling for quests, right, this is actually going to fall under pros and cons. So the pro for this is that no matter what level you are, the quest you're doing is always going to be the same level that you are, which is cool because it means that you can leave a lot of the quests for after you've completed the campaign, so that you can, you don't feel like it's taking you 2 weeks to complete the campaign. You can rush all the campaign quests and then go back and do a lot of your side quests after to fill out your renown to get your Paragon points. So it is, I do like that one side of it. Seeing other players in the open world can be fun. Sometimes you'll have cool interactions, but it's not like you're going to be seeing them all the time. It's just, if you're doing Helltides and Legions, yeah, you're going to see loads of other players. But when you're kind of just in the open world, occasionally you'll see another player, maybe you'll interact with them. So that's just sort of like that's at the bottom of the pros list. It's not like this amazing thing that makes the game unique and worth playing in and of itself. And the last pro, for me, which is something that I know every single Path of Exile player that's never bought MTX is going to love this, and that is that your gear MTX is essentially free. Yes, you can buy really cool looking armor sets, but in Diablo 4, when you salvage gear, you unlock the transmute, the appearance of that piece of gear, which is awesome. It means that you can really customize how your character looks, and you can change the armor pieces, you can change the colors, you can change what your weapon looks like. It's really, really cool, and it is something that I would love it if they did that in Path of Exile. I know they never will, but to me that is a massive pro. To be honest, it's actually like, near the top of the list. Next, I'm going to go into the cons, and the first one is something that frustrated me to no end, and that is I don't know if it's a bug or a feature, but quests will not save properly when you log out. Right, so say you're doing a quest, and that quest has 10 quest states, 10 mini quests that make up that chain of quests, right? Say you've gotten to quest number 6 of the 10. You can log out, and when you log back in, you'll be back at quest number 4 or 5, and you'll have to redo them again. Whether it's a main quest or a side quest, I found that happening to me all the time, and it was really annoying. I felt like I was being forced to play the game, like forced to finish a quest, and if I didn't, I was punished for it when I logged back in and had to redo things. It was extremely annoying. I really hated it, and it actually got to the point where I wouldn't even do certain quests. If I was like, okay, I've got half an hour left to play the game, I'm not going to do any quests, because if I spend 20 minutes on them, when I log in tomorrow, I'm going to have to spend another 10 minutes redoing what I've already done. Next, the mount system is awful. The controls for the mount are truly terrible. If there is like a corner that is even remotely slightly in the way, your horse is just going to stop, right? And you get like a boost, like a speed boost. You get 3 charges, and if you time it right, you can get them to respawn enough, but not so that it has 100% uptime. But when you go from so you've pressed space, you've got your speed boost, it lasts however many seconds. At the end of it, instead of like a nice gradual decline in speed, it's just 100 to 0. You go from galloping to trotting or cantering, whatever. It feels very jarring, and just it's not smooth, it's not polished. I feel like they could really work on the mount system a lot. I don't know if other players agree with me, but to me that was a real awful thing, and it still is, because you're always using your mounts. The next con is related to the pro. So in the pros, I went over what I liked about level scaling. Now I'm going to go over the cons about that. Level scaling for quests makes XP farming pretty much non-existent. In Path of Exile, you can go into an area 6 levels above you, depending on what your level is, and you'll get more XP than if you were on level or over leveled. Because all the quests scale to your level, that never happens. You're just going to get the same amount of XP from an area regardless of what level you are, and I kind of dislike that. I feel like, I say this game's more of an MMO than an ARPG, and even other MMOs I've played, they have areas that have level requirements, and if you go into the areas under level, you're going to get more XP, but that's just not a thing in this game until you reach World Tier 4, when, it's every area is level 73 and above, and I think World Tier 3, but I can't remember, so forgive me for that one. But until then, for leveling, there is no such thing as doing higher level zones to get more XP faster. Next is also a big one, resource management. So, for example, compared to Path of Exile, your mana upkeep, right? Path of Exile, you've got mana flasks, you've got the clarity aura, so that you don't have to worry about mana being an issue. Sure, it can be an issue that you can fix endgame, but in Diablo 4, your resource management is non-existent until you hit like mid-endgame. Even early endgame, your resource management is still, far from ideal. There are so many things that are locked to the Paragon tree for getting better gear, or, things in your skill tree that you get later on, and gear that you can get in the endgame, that makes it impossible. You're going to be playing at level 20, and you've got your main skill, and you're going to be able to cast it 3-4 times at most before you then have to use your lower damage skills to regain that resource. It feels so punishing. It feels like they don't want you to play the skill until you reach the end game. Like, Bone Spear, that is my build. I'm a Bone Spear Necromancer. I only really started pretty much just Bone Spearing like level 65 to 70. Until then, it was, early game, 1-2 bone spears, no more essence. Late game, I could do a few more and then I'd run out, especially on bosses, because, when I get to the point where my Paragon tree gives me essence on kill, then for packs, if I kill a whole pack in one go, if I'm not spamming my ability too much, I can sort of keep my essence going. But early game resource management is an absolute nightmare, and it is a huge con, in my opinion. Next is something that a lot of Path of Exile players love, which is crafting. Crafting gear in Path of Exile is pretty much perfect. There are so many different ways that you can craft gear. You can use currency, you can use harvest if you want, you can use Rog or Danig from Expedition, and there are so many different ways to craft gear, remove things you don't want, add more things, etc. Diablo 4, there is one option for craft, well, two technically, and that is that you can replace a single modifier on a piece of gear, and that is it. Once you've replaced that modifier, you cannot do another one, and it's very RNG. You pick the one you want to get rid of, and then you get given two options to replace it with. So that is essentially the crafting. The only other option for crafting is putting your aspects onto your gear. Your aspects are things that, augment your build. So aspects and enchanting is what they call their crafting system, are the only two ways to craft your gear. And if you love crafting, if you love making unique gear or perfect gear, this kind of isn't the game for you. You're just going to be farming your gear until you get something that has, say, 4 perfect mods, 1 mod you don't want, and then you can get rid of that 1 mod and hopefully get a 5th good mod, or just get something that's completely irrelevant to your build. And last on the list of cons is that dungeons are way too long. You have these long sprawling dungeons that have packs of mobs here and there, and you have things that you have to do to go into the go further in the dungeon, like find this boss, kill this boss, free the trapped villagers, collect this key from this guy or whatever, and it just feels so long. You're running through like all these long corridors, and there's until you get to nightmare dungeons, the mob density is pretty awful. Or like, especially when you have ones where the quest to get further in the dungeon is kill every single monster, and it's a long sprawling dungeon. You spend so much time running after all these monsters and killing them all. It's way too long. They need to condense the dungeons. They need to make them half the length, honestly. It's just, it's so frustrating, especially early game, just feeling like you're wandering through this empty area, kill a pack of mobs, move through another empty area, kill another pack of mobs, search for a boss. It really sucks. As a game that, again, I compared to an MMO, the MMO I played the most of was Neverwinter Online, and the dungeons in that were awesome. It was, you'd have your first room/area where there was good mob density, you'd kill them, you'd have an actual mini boss, not just like, a strong elite mob in Diablo 4. You'd kill the mini boss, you'd get some potentially good gear, and then you'd do that 2, 3, 4 times depending on the dungeon, and it was a lot more engaging than this. Now I'm going to go into some differences as we end up this video. So the first thing, which I mentioned twice already, it's more of an MMO than an ARPG. So if you aren't an MMO fan and you're more into ARPGs like Path of Exile, that's going to be a bit of an issue for you. Secondly, far less build diversity. I don't think there's a single online game that has more build diversity than Path of Exile. You've got hundreds of different skills, you've got 7 different classes, each class has their different ascendancies. Depending what support you use with your skills, there's different ways to use it. It's just, seemingly infinite. Whereas Diablo 4, you've got your different classes. Each class has like, I think 4 or 5 different skills you can use, and that's about it. So as far as if you want a game where you can have loads of different build options, I mean, sure, there are still going to be like, 25 to 30 different options for builds. But I mean, well, if you are the type of person who makes 4 or 5 characters a league, you can go through that in a year easily. So for longevity, at the moment, not enough build diversity, in my opinion anyway. Next, which I kind of touched on early on, is that Path of Exile has vastly more in-game options. There are so many more things that you can set your goal for. Killing a certain boss, getting, a certain item that only drops from a certain boss, etc. There's so many different in-game bosses to chase after that it's, that it really keeps you playing longer. You get to enjoy the game longer because once you've, completed one goal of killing one boss, you can then go after the next and the next and the next. There's so much more to do in the game, which again, Diablo 4, early days. I know that they're probably going to add more on, but at the moment, I'm making this video for right now, not saying, is Diablo 4 going to be worth buying in 5 years' time? No, I'm talking about, is it worth buying now as a Path of Exile player? And because of that, that's a bit of a downside for it. Next, item drops / crafting, far more rewarding in Path of Exile. You know, there's so many items in the game that even if you're not using them, you can get an item and be like, whoa, that's a really good item. I can sell that on the, I can list that for sale. Someone will buy it, I'll get loads of currency. I can then buy better gear for this character or start investing currency to buy better gear for another character. Or you can get something drop and you'll see it and say it's a rare drop and it can make you think, oh, nice, now I can make this build, a build that you weren't even thinking of playing. But now that you've got this item that the build revolves around, you can be like, nice, I can now play this build. That doesn't really happen. Sure, there are rare items in the game, but it's not as rewarding as it is in Path of Exile, in my opinion, just because of, the vast, the variety of different things you can get and how they can impact your build or, allow you to play a different build or improve your current build. Lastly, which is honestly depending on your opinion, is that there's no economy. So depending on your opinion, that's either a good or a bad thing. So there's no way to list things for sale, which, so the pro of that is that you don't have to worry about annoying trades and spending ages whispering 50 people to buy one thing that you need. But then the con of that is that you can't then buy things that you need. So it really is up to you as to whether or not, if you're a solo self-found player, then, that's it. The game's essentially solo self-found. Yeah, you can trade items, but there isn't like a massive trade community going on in the game, as far as I'm aware. I've played probably close to 100 hours. Actually, I don't know how many hours I've been playing, but I've been playing a lot since the game came out, and I've never traded once with anyone. So not having an economy, not having a big trade system, that's really entirely up to you as to whether that's something that you like or not, but it is something that is worth mentioning as a big difference between the two games. So that brings me to the end and my conclusion of, is Diablo 4 worth buying as a Path of Exile player? It depends on what $70 or euros or pounds is to you. If that's something that you make more than $70 in a day, and if you've listened through this video and you like the pros and you don't mind the cons, then yes, it's worth buying. It's a fun game. I've been enjoying it. But right now, if $70 or euros or pounds is, a lot for you to spend on a game, I would say at this moment in time, no. As a Path of Exile player, it is not worth getting. I never would have bought the game myself. A colleague, someone that I work with, bought the game for me because 70 euros for me, because I'm on EU, is about 1,400 of my currency, right? I don't even make that much in a week, every week. Sometimes I make more than that in a week. It is a lot of money to spend on a game that doesn't have anywhere near as much content and as many features as Path of Exile, a free-to-play game, does have. So at the end of the day, will you enjoy it? Probably, yes, you will have fun. I'm not saying it's not a fun game, but as a Path of Exile player, it really depends on, are any of the cons that I mentioned deal-breaking things to you? If they are, don't get it. Wait a few years, wait till they add more content, wait until maybe there's going to be a sale, or until you've, got enough money to spend on the game. But right now, if 70 euros or whatever is a lot for you, I'm going to say probably don't get the game. Stick to watching streams or YouTube videos. If you're a huge Diablo fan and you love Path of Exile, yeah, definitely get it. If you like the other Diablo games, you'll most likely enjoy this as well. So my main argument for whether or not it's worth getting as a Path of Exile player boils down to price. It is a lot of money to spend on a game that doesn't have a lot to do. There's a decent amount of stuff to do, but compared to Path of Exile, there is really, really not much to do in the game. And so at the end, the decision is now yours to make. Having watched this video, you've heard what I like about the game, what I dislike, what I think about different parts of the game, and you can now make the decision as to whether or not you're going to get the game. I hope this video has been helpful to you. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope it's helped you decide if you've been on the fence as to whether or not you should get it. I really hope that this video has helped you make a decision as to, yes, I'm going to get it, or no, I'm not. If you have any other questions or things that you're wondering about before you buy the game, feel free to drop a comment, ask me. I will reply. I usually reply to my comments within a day at most. I check the YouTube Studio app somewhat often, so I usually get back to pretty much all my comments. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you liked it. If you want to see more like this, feel free to subscribe, like, leave a comment, share it with your friends, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.